With Radio Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The Deputy Secretary General to the United Nations and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa ECA, Claver Getaite, has said that Algeria invested its resources in serving its people and is an example to follow in terms of development. Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf today received here in Algiers the Senior Advisor to the U.S. President for Africa, Arab Affairs and the Middle East, Masoud Boulos, now on an official visit to Algeria. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, says the fragile ceasefire in Gaza is easing the humanitarian crisis for children, warning that the situation remains dire with 100 children killed since the truce began. Hello and welcome to Radio Algeria International. I'm your host, Masoud Sharfi. The Deputy Secretary General for the United Nations and Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Africa ECA, Claver Getaite, has said that Algeria has invested its resources in serving its people and is an example to follow in terms of development, praising the great progress made in this field. In a statement made to the press following his meeting with the President Abdelmadjid Tebboune, Mr. Getaite said that Algeria is the only country in the world to provide electricity to all its citizens, as well as free education for all, which has contributed to this great progress. He indicated that his visit is part of an effort to learn from Algeria's development experiences under the leadership of President Tebboune, emphasizing that he has learned a lot from the president and that this will be very useful in his discussions with other leaders. Mr. Getaite also praised the achievements and progress made, saying that through his visit here, he aims to draw on his experiences and strengthen cooperation and coordination between the Economic Commission for Africa and Algeria in the future. He added that the meeting was very important as it enabled him to learn a lot from valuable information about Algeria, thanking the President of the Republic for the opportunity. The State Minister in charge of the Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, Ahmed Attaf, today received here in Algiers the Senior Advisor to the U.S. President for Africa, Arab Affairs and the Middle East, Masoud Boulos, now on an official visit to Algeria. During the meeting, the two men examined how to promote the U.S.-Algerian relations. In this respect, the two sides stressed the importance of promoting the dialogue existing between the U.S. and Algeria, insisting on the importance of promoting partnership between the two countries, particularly in the economic field. The two sides also exchanged views on various topical issues on the Arab world and in Africa, notably the developments taking place in Libya, the Sahel-Sahara region, and Western Sahara. The Minister of State in charge of Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has highlighted in Tunis the importance of holding a session of the tripartite neighboring countries mechanism, Algeria, Tunisia and Egypt, to discuss the latest developments in the Libyan crisis. More details with Miriam Barshi.
In a press statement made after being received by the Tunisian President Kais Saied, Mr. Attaf explained that just as President Abdelmadjid Tebboune and Tunisian counterpart value strong Algeria-Tunisia ties, the meeting in Tunis aims to unite Algeria, Tunisia and Egypt in supporting Libya's stability and the Libyan-led solution. He said the session aims to reactivate the tripartite mechanism uniting Algeria, Tunisia and Egypt to support a Libyan-led political settlement, and thanked President Kais Saied for Tunisia's initiative, reaffirming that Libya's security is part and parcel of the three countries' security and the stability of our common space. Mr. Attaf said that the meeting, during which he conveyed President Tebboune's greeting, came ahead of the commemoration of the Saqiat Sidi Youssef, reaffirming ties with President Kais Saied.
لقد كان لهذا اللقاء وقع خاص.
This meeting had a special resonance as our two countries together in these days sense the breezes of a timeless anniversary recorded in the annals of their shared history, an anniversary that embodies the finest images of brotherhood, solidarity and sacrifice. It is the anniversary of the events of Sayyid Sidi Yusuf, which our two countries are preparing to commemorate in a manner befitting its stature, value and symbolism. On this occasion, I had the honor of conveying to His Excellency President Qais Said the greetings of his brother President Abdelmajid Tebboune and his sincere congratulations on this cherished anniversary engraved in our shared memory. I also affirmed to His Excellency President Qais Said the great care and firm commitment that his brother President Abdelmajid Tebboune attaches to continuing joint work with him in order to achieve further gains along the path of strengthening Algerian-Tunisian relations.
He stressed that this commitment reflects a shared vision to strengthen cooperation and solidarity, adding that the meeting provided an opportunity to express shared satisfaction at the key outcomes of the 23rd session of the Algerian-Tunisian High Joint Committee held last month in Tunis. The State Minister said he listened with great interest to President Qais Said's analysis on turning the outcomes into concrete projects, noting that the Tunisian President reaffirmed the shared complementary and integrative vision with President Abdelmajid Tebboune for the future of Algerian-Tunisian relations.
The Algerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has called on Algerian citizens living abroad in precarious and irregular situations to contact diplomatic and consular representatives in order to submit applications for regularization. The initiative is part of a decision taken by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to allow those citizens who are being prosecuted for minor offenses related to public order or similar situations to regularize their status and return to Algeria in an organized manner on conditions that they do not reoffend. The ministry reaffirmed the state's commitment to supporting and to protecting the national community living abroad while addressing their concerns. The Minister of State for Hydrocarbons and Mines, Mr. Mohammed Arqab, has received the CEO of Saudi Abu Nahyan Holding Company, Mr. Turki Al-Amari. During the meeting, the two sides discussed opportunities for cooperation and investment in the field of seawater desalination and related infrastructure within the framework of the National Seawater Desalination Program, as well as ways how experienced companies can contribute to the implementation of strategic projects launched by Algeria to strengthen its water security. Mr. Arqab presented the guidelines of the National Seawater Desalination Program, which is aimed at building new seawater desalination plants to cover about 62% of the national drinking water needs outside of groundwater. The Minister of State in charge of Hydrocarbons and Mines, Mohammed Arqab, has been received in Niamey by the President of Niger, Army General Abdurrahman Tiani, as part of his visit to the Republic of Niger. More details with Miriam Barshi.
Mr. Arqab conveyed the President Tebboune's greetings to his counterpart from Niger and his commitment to strengthening the ties between the two brotherly peoples and deepening bilateral cooperation in various fields. The President of Niger also conveyed his greetings and high regard to the President Abdelmajid Tebboune, reiterating his country's willingness to strengthen bilateral cooperation relations in various fields and to work towards consolidating African cooperation and strengthening the South-South partnership. Earlier, Mr. Arqab was received in Niamey by the Prime Minister, Minister of Economy and Finance of the Republic of Niger, Ali Mohamed Lamine Zaini, to discuss opportunities to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the fields of hydrocarbons and mining, particularly in the oil and gas industry. The two parties examined Sonatrach's recent activities as part of its research and exploration project in the Kafra oil field in northern Niger, as well as ways of strengthening coordination, particularly between the public group and the Niger's Petroleum Society, SONIDEP, in order to achieve common objectives. Referring to the Trans-Saharan Gas Pipeline project, the two parties stressed the strategic importance of the project, at the regional, African and international levels, highlighting its major role in supporting socio-economic development in the countries crossed by the gas pipeline.
UNRWA has denounced the arson of its headquarters in occupied Jerusalem that has already been partially demolished by the Israeli occupying authorities. The announcement was made by UNRWA's General Commissioner Philip Lazzarini, who deplored such actions denounced by the UN agency, which failed to elaborate. Earlier, UNRWA stated that there were no limits to the contempt toward the UN and the international law in the occupied Palestinian territories. The UN agency has repeatedly called on the Israeli occupying authorities to lift all obstacles undermining Gaza's access to humanitarian aid. It pointed out winter had worsened an already disastrous situation in the enclave and insisted on the necessity to give an unhindered and continuing access to aid. The United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, says the fragile ceasefire in Gaza is easing the humanitarian crisis for children, with more aid entering the enclave and famine conditions improving. However, UNICEF Deputy Executive Director Ted Shayban, who spoke after a week-long visit to Gaza and the West Bank, has warned that the situation remains dire, with over 100 children reported killed since the truce began.
I'm speaking to you with both hope and concern after this visit. This was my 5th visit to the state of Palestine since the war began. For the first time in many months, there are signs that an imperfect, fragile, but vital ceasefire is making a difference in the lives of over 1 million children. Since the agreement took hold, we've seen improvements impacting children's lives. More truckloads of life-saving aid are entering Gaza, albeit not yet sufficiently to meet the magnitude of needs. The food security situation has improved and famine has been reversed. These gains matter. They show what is possible when the fighting pauses, political commitment are sustained, and humanitarian access opens. But the situation remains extremely precarious and deadly for many children. More than 100 children have been reportedly killed in Gaza since the ceasefire of early October. Despite the progress with food security, 100,000 children remain acutely malnourished and require long-term care. 1.3 million people, many of them children, are in urgent need of proper shelter. Families are living in tents and bombed-out buildings, battered by heavy rain, strong winds, and freezing temperatures. It really is miserable in those tents.
According to Shayban, nutrition services now cover 196 facilities, and temporary learning spaces have reopened for 250,000 children, with plans to expand education access to 700,000 school-aged children who have missed formal schooling since October 2023. The Secretary General for the United Nations, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has warned of the escalation of violations of international law and their negative impact on international peace and security, stressing that the rule of law is the cornerstone of global peace and the beating heart of the United Nations Charter, at a time when this rule is being replaced in many regions by the law of the jungle. More details with Jamal Silmani.
In a speech made before the holding of an open debate on the Security Council on the promotion and strengthening of the rule of law in the maintenance of international peace and security, Mr. Guterres said the world is witnessing flagrant violations of international law and blatant disregard for the United Nations Charter.
Around the world, the rule of law is replaced by the law of the jungle. We see flagrant violations of international law and brazen disregard for the UN Charter. From Gaza to Ukraine and around the world, the rule of law is being treated as an a la carte menu. We see states flouting the rule of law with impunity through the illegal use of force, the targeting of civilian infrastructure, human rights violations and abuses, the illegal development of nuclear weapons, unconstitutional changes of government, and denial of life-saving humanitarian aid. These violations set dangerous precedents, encouraging other countries to do what they want instead of what they are required to do under international law. They breed mistrust and division among nations, and they undermine people's faith in our ability to find solutions together.
Mr. Guterres has said the UN Security Council stands alone in its charter-mandated authority to act on behalf of all member states on questions of peace and security, and stressed that no other body or ad hoc coalition can legally require all member states to comply with decisions on peace and security.
The founders of this organization understood that global problems can only be solved by wielding not the weapons of war, but instead the tools of diplomacy supported by a system based on international law, by dialogue, not the zero-sum rhetoric of division, and by collaboration, not geopolitical competition. The Security Council alone adopts decisions binding on all. No other body or ad hoc coalition can legally require all member states to comply with decisions on peace and security. Only the Security Council can authorize the use of force under international law as set out in the Charter. Its responsibility is singular, its obligation is universal.
The UN Secretary-General also considered that a reform of the Security Council is essential and that action must now be taken without delay to strengthen the representativeness and effectiveness of this body.
The International Organization for Migration, IOM, has announced that more than 3 million displaced persons and refugees had returned to their homes in Sudan by the end of last November. The organization stated that more than 3/4 of the returnees are internally displaced, noting that the capital Khartoum recorded the highest number of returnees, totaling about 1.4 million people, followed by Al Jazeera state around 1.1 million. Sudanese Prime Minister Kamal Idris recently announced the official return of the government to Khartoum after more than 2.5 years of relocation to Port Sudan in the east of the country, a step representing the beginning of a new phase in Sudan's political and service landscape. In this connection, the Sudanese army announced that it had broken the siege of the city of Dilin in southern Sudan, in Kordofan, which had been imposed for more than a year and a half by the rapid paramilitary support forces. The Sudanese army reopened the road to Dilin, securing its approaches and inflicting heavy losses on the RSF, while the RSF shifted focus to Kordofan, capturing Heglig and intensifying the Kadugli siege. A UN assessment confirmed famine in Kadugli, and Dilin could face a similar situation. You have been listening to Radio Algeria International. That was all for today's news bulletin. Thank you so much. Stay tuned.
Hello there and welcome to this program devoted to an important event that marked the Algerian history, the 8-day strike. The 1957 Algerian General Strike, or as it is known, the 8-day strike, began on 28 January 1957, the same day as a United Nations debate on the Algerian cause, and ended on February 4th. The 8-day strike brought all the Algerian people around the National Liberation Front in 1957 and confirmed the popularity of the November Revolution. The Execution and Coordination Committee, which was the highest body of the November Revolution, emerging from the Sommam Congress, decided on the strike. The 8-day strike was postponed twice in order to coincide with the UN debate on the Algerian cause. Before the event, the committee had published several leaflets announcing the showdown. The militants insisted on people not to circulate in European cities and not to leave the Kasbah of Algiers. They also urged people to stock up food and water for 8 days. Veterans called on citizens to condemn torture and violence against Algerians and promote the Algerian cause on the international level through the strike. Moreover, the revolution figures in Algiers handed 10 million francs to militants to carry out the mission of mobilizing the people and setting food points throughout the district of Algiers. All this, however, was not sufficient. Colonial authorities heard about the strike and threatened to cut off food in Muslim neighborhoods. Veterans thus prepared themselves for the worst, knowing that they would have to feed the 700,000 inhabitants of Algiers, including 80,000 in the Kasbah. The National Liberation Front then restored 2 militant women and sent them to homes to secretly encourage families to participate in this event and also to make a census of families in need. They distributed the vouchers to buy food in coordination with traders. Traders also took the initiative to store half of their merchandise for free distribution to residents. When the Pieds Noirs, people of French and other European origin, heard about the strike, they rushed to grocery stores to get their supplies. The Algiers population was afraid of the reaction of certain fanatic settler movements, especially that the 400,000 settlers who lived in Algiers had asked the French police to provide them with weapons. The political objectives of the strike have been achieved and Algeria's voice was heard around the world. On February 4, 1957, the UN General Assembly placed on its agenda the Algerian question. And although France still had influence at the UN, the November Revolution succeeded in winning an international dimension. The strike also dealt a blow to the argument of colonial France, which refused to negotiate with the National Liberation Front earlier, describing it as small guerrilla who did not express the will of the Algerian people. The 8-day strike was a great achievement, but the cost was high. Thousands of Algerians were arrested, others were fired from their jobs and evicted from their homes, and 40% of the population of Algiers only had been interrogated. It's worth recalling that the 8-day strike was all over Algeria and even in France. In provinces like Constantine, Béjaïa, Annaba, Biskra and Oran, the Algerian strikers were subject to the same violence: imprisonment, house arrest and suspension. The repression was of rare violence to such a peaceful protest. The French resorted to mass torture and massacres and waves of arrests, including the arrest of Al Arabi